fall in the orange column, the intensive supports.
I just wanted to make sure, because that,
Yes.
I want to make
right.
sure everybody's clear on that, because many people think we're all the way in the red right now.
Right, no. So the purpose of Ms. Huff Franklin's office and being here and doing their review is to ensure that you don't get to that level.
Right.
Right, so we're going through as a team, saying, here are the things that we think you need to look at, things you need to put in place, focus your plan this way, and that'll still steer clear of that red column.
That's right.
Just want to make
That's
sure
right.
it was said.
And we'll clarify that the purpose of our office at this point is to be proactive and preventive. And though we said it before, we'll reiterate, at this point in our state, no district will qualify for a new academic distress commission for at least 3 years, based on safe harbor. So Youngstown City Schools currently has an academic distress commission, and they will have, their new members have been appointed, and they will be appointing a CEO as of December. That's Youngstown. Lorraine has 2 years. They're currently an academic distress commission, but they have 2 years to receive, if they do not receive a C or better in PI or overall grade or PI or value added, they too will have the same possibility of having the situation is Youngstown and having a CEO appointed to them. No other district at this point qualifies for an academic distress commission to be established, because to have one established means you'll have an overall grade of an F, which won't come into play until next year, but the average of an F. So right now, the criteria would be having an F in performance index, what we call PI, or a D or an F in value added. You have to have both of those for 3 years in a row. So for any district who had an overall or the average of an F this year, this would be their first year. And if they ended up having A's, then it starts all over again. So it's in both criteria. So Dayton is not an academic distress commission, and that's the purpose for us coming, to help you not have an academic distress commission established. And based on all indications up to this point, we're confident in saying you're moving in a positive trajectory to not have that happen. So, and that's our hope, that we will continue with our supports and working with both the district and the community to make sure that doesn't happen.
Thank you so much for your reassurance and your support. I want to go to the slide that had the 3 SIG school improvement grant, and just get a little bit more clarification on what your expectation of their improvement plans were. That you, right there, you said these, we know, are some of our lowest performing schools, no question. And so I think you are aware of, we have a district-wide plan.
Yes.
Very detailed, and it's very clear. We have gone over that thoroughly. What is your expectation of the improvement plan for each of these 3 schools? And what I'm asking, I'm surely they'll have some individualized objectives, but will there be any commonalities in terms of what the schools should be doing, like before and after school programs, and will these funds be used as to fund some mandates for
Yes.
low performing schools?
Right, exactly.
That's my real question.
And essentially, these are carryover funds, so these are older SIG funds that we've swept from other places and
School improvement grant.
School improvement grant, thank you, and redistributed. So this has been communicated to the superintendent and the treasurer, and there's been a communication sent to them about the availability of the funds and the process to assure building a plan that meets criteria, and I have some of the pieces spelled out. So they are submitting quarterly financial expenditure reports showing that they're spending in alignment with the plan. So there'll be some monitoring of that. So it's not just sending the money and say, here you go fund, whatever, the new playground or whatever. It has to be aligned with the school improvement plan that school has established already to build supports around that plan.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Board Member Nardi?
Yes, thank you for there are a lot more details in this report that help us
get our hands around the meat of the situation. I've been working with the district leadership team just to see what they're doing. And I've been working with them for about 3 years off and on. And their process now is much more defined by the data that they have. But it's a regiment that really, I watch the teachers and the administrators there really focus in on, because they're looking at the data, the overall district data, and then they're listening to the reports from the buildings below them and giving suggestions back to them, and that's that spiraling effect you're talking about.
Right.
So it's really a good process, but we just have to keep our noses down to get that done.
Right.
And I thank you for making sure that we're doing that.
Great, great. Going back to fidelity and,
Yeah.
Implementing with fidelity.
Yes.
The plan is there,
Yeah.
so great, great. There were other questions? Were there questions from the board? Okay. Okay.
Thank you for the presentation. I've got a couple of questions. The Dayton Watch Schools, that really caught my eye, this list. Because we have 29 schools altogether in the list that you have presented, which includes our charter school, DECA, and all of our other buildings. What surprised me is to find DECA or Stivers in this Dayton Watch schools. Now, I look at the methodology in school labels, and I can see that pretty much every school is either priority, focus, or watch school Ohio-wide. The only way to be in the green is to have all A's, or to have some kind of special designation like Department of Education's blue ribbon designation. Maybe only 5% of schools in all of Ohio have such designations. 95% would be therefore in the red. Is that correct?
You want to speak to that? Because they don't he's saying that all schools are either here or they're here, but they may not necessarily
No.
be in either one of those.
These, the list of priority focus and watch are 5% of the school buildings across the state, the 5% lowest performing across the state. That's what.
But they're
No,
not
no, no,
lowest
no.
performing,
To-
that's the
total.
thing.
I mean, total. Okay, so this list is just focusing on Dayton. There's a huge list on ODE's website that you can go see when you click those, and you will see all the districts and all the school buildings there that are involved. So,
But
DECA?
Stivers has a B in the PI index as
Very-
a building.
Good question. So
It's also,
Stivers,
if I may finish, it
Yes.
also is ranked by US News and World Report as the 73rd best school in the state of Ohio. Actually, it's superior to Brookville, Bethel, Centerville, and Springboro High Schools. How did it make it into that list?
That
Same
is-
with DECA, which is the
Yeah.
#1 charter school in the state. How are they there? Horace Mann, same thing, a very good school.
that's,
Several other very good schools there. What are they doing
Yeah.
in a list?
that's a very good question. I appreciate you asking that question. So let's start with Stivers. So Stivers has that designation because of the gap for the students with disabilities. They're not progressing, they're not achieving. So
With those students.
with those students particularly. All right, so that may be an excellent school, and that's great that it is an excellent school. The students that are there that are identified as students with disabilities need some additional focus and support. So the plan that school has built, that's coordinated with the district plan, is built to support, focus on those students and help them move forward and close that gap and help them achieve. That's what that Stivers is. DECA is a D or an F on AMO. So that's annual measurable objectives for 3 years in a row.
Okay, I mean, that clarifies it, but still, I fundamentally disagree with these designations because these are excellent schools, not because we're board members here.
Right,
But it's independently certified.
I-
And
you know,
like I
here's-
said, they're better than Centerville or Springboro. We don't find Springboro in any lists, but we find our school for some reason.
Yeah.
That's really strange to us. But I understand the explanation nevertheless.
Now, you mentioned Cincinnati Public Schools. I'm just very familiar with Cincinnati Public Schools. So Walnut Hills is #1 in the state. But they have a high gifted population, value added is low for them because it's hard to add value to those that are already high. So it is a dilemma across the state. You may have an excellent district, you may have an excellent school, but still the designation because of these specific areas that are still not met. Now, for those parents who have students with disabilities, if the gap is not closed, in their minds, the school is not excellent if it's not for their child. In all honesty, you know, I am a resident of Cincinnati, so I have the same issues. Though we're excellent in so many fronts, there's still gaps, and parents have a right to demand that the gaps get filled. And this is our point. We want to give support. We're not trying, just like in our report, we show strengths, but we also show challenges, and we want to give recommendations. But, you know, one saying we're starting to say is we're not perfect, but we're working towards perfection. We're working there. And one thing I have been sharing, when I was with Race to the Top before this, with Ohio Department of Education, as much as our urban schools are put down in our country, we actually had representatives from the country of Finland sit down with us and ask, how are you reaching your minorities? How are you reaching your disadvantaged? So the world sees what we're doing. It's just not always panning out when it's time to take the test. And, you know, but our teachers, our administrators are doing fine things. We just, you know, we're competing with the world, and it behooves us as Ohio Department of Education to help you, and it behooves you, for the sake of your students and parents, to be pushing for better as well. And this is what we're striving for.
Oh, and I wholeheartedly agree. And in fact, I'm a big fan of international competitions like the PISA competition, even though that is flawed because they compare the whole United States of America to Shanghai, China. How can you compare a whole country of 315 million people to one city in one country? It makes no sense, but that's how they do it. But going back to the perfection, nobody is perfect, nothing is perfect. Harvard, by this same definition, is actually a failure because 1.5% of Harvard's graduates are jobless permanently. They can't find a job. So according to this criteria, if there is this subpopulation of the leading university, #1 university in the world perhaps, which can't find a job, therefore does it mean that it didn't fully succeed? Does it mean it's not perfect? I would disagree with that. So, I mean,
It's
going back to
societal.
this, I think Stivers is a very good school. Will there be a few students who don't quite make it and therefore the criteria is not achieved? Absolutely, but this will probably never go away. Now, this gets into the second question, which is we have 29 buildings in the list altogether, in all the watches, in all the lists, but yet we have only 10 consultants. Why is that? Why is it not 29 consultants?
Now we're talking about money.
Yeah, ultimately, yes. But our intention is not to come in, we want to provide supports and help you grow the system yourself.
And we need it.
Right, so our intention is not to come in and take over and do a one-on-one, you know, pair up and kind of, and march in there and do that. Our intention is to build the district to be able to do that. So empower the district. And part of the requirements for those you'll see that the district is to identify personnel at each of those buildings to help support that process. And then they're gonna grow that within those buildings, so it becomes a culture in your buildings, right? And we can back away. We don't need to be in there, because you can.
We don't want you to back away. We need all the free help we can get. The latest story in Dayton Daily News says that we have hard time hiring teachers because we don't have enough money to offer to teachers. So we've got up to 30 spots right now that are vacant. So, you know, please bring us 29 consultants instead of 10. We ask you, we beg you, please bring them to us for a year, help us turn this district around, and, you know.
The other thing you do have going for you, which I put at the very end, was your community collaborative efforts. And I can't mention that enough. To see that built across your plan, your district plan, and in your building plans on how you engage and ignite the community to be involved to help support is very powerful. And if you continue on that path and you help develop and move that so that's part of your culture, I foresee success with that.
Thank you. And one final question. OSBA did a study of all the school districts in Ohio, and they plotted this chart, which shows that the higher the PI, the lower poverty rate in your district. The higher the poverty, the lower the PI score. And that's very interesting. This is empirical data based on your data. So they took from your website the raw numbers, they plotted them, and they produced this based on 2013, 2014 report card performance. So I'll be happy to pass it on. How is this finally going to be put into the formula? You know, I know that you're working with a vendor, SAS, which, by the way, still doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Why don't we, as a state, own our own data, and why don't we own our own formula? Why do we have to subcontract it and let somebody else own that secret formula? But why don't we adjust this for these factors, like Florida does, like New York does, like California does, like so many other states which adjust for socioeconomic conditions, English language learners, and so many other factors that we in Ohio do not?
Well, we'll answer that in two phases. Number one, value added at least helps you a teacher to work with students where they are and get credit for at least giving them a year's growth and beyond. So supposedly, hypothetically, it helps to dispel inequities in socioeconomic factors. On the second point, we have Mary Ann Motley, who's the director of our accountability office, which I was going to share at the end as we segue into these other questions that were asked beforehand, who is willing to come back to the board and answer the questions brought up to Chris Woolard and give more detail about understanding the report card and the different designations within, and can better address the question of how SES is incorporated or not, and how our tabulations, and what's being done moving forward, what suggestions are being made, because I do know for sure Akron has made some great, given great defense for how we can possibly look at things differently, which we will plead the case to the Department of Education in Washington, D.C. This summer. That is, a part of what we plan to do. Another part of that is, working with Ohio 8 districts, which Superintendent Ward works with. I particularly support the Ohio 8 districts. It is just a common plight for the large urbans. And so looking at best practices of others and trying to figure out who is getting it right is a part of what we're trying to encourage the districts to do. Somebody is figuring out ways to retain, and they have similar situations, both in our state and outside of our state, that we're just going to start trying to pull resources to be of support to the districts.
Thank you. I appreciate it, and I appreciate your lobbying of Washington, D.C., as well as Columbus on this. In fact, let me tell you a funny story. Several of us went to Columbus, to OSBA's headquarters, to do special training on the report card.
Okay.
So this subject is so complex that we had to actually go there for special training. Now, the funny story doesn't end here. The Battelle for Kids, who was the contractor explaining this to us, to a room of, 50 board members there, would stumble several times. She wouldn't know the answer herself, even though she was the contractor. And therefore, our very own Tom Gunlock had to intervene multiple times, explaining to her so that she could explain to us. It was really surreal, actually, but, so on this
It
note,
is
I'd like to.
complex, but we will submit that, I showed you the names in the very beginning. Lana Rivera is our associate superintendent, who, I apologize, he, as well as Chris Woolard, who is our senior executive director, wanted to be here this evening. But we all were coming in late from the state board meeting today. But they are willing to come back. At one point, I think we were trying to set up a time to meet with your board, and we would make sure to have the people here that would be able to explain in detail. So I'm hoping maybe before I leave, you might be able to give us possibly 3 dates that we could submit to particularly our accountability office
Our summit.
to see when we could have a visit back to just more thoroughly explain in practical terms. That would be user-friendly and more understandable for you.
Thank you. I have basically 2 different areas that I want to ask some questions in. And one of it is the climate and culture. You have a person, you have one person working in the administration building with whom? Who are they working with?
Oh, okay.
And how is that structured? How does it get down into the schools? Could you give some information? And then I'm going to go on ahead and ask the second question because that might kind of fall in with it. The folks that you have coming in to the school buildings to do special instruction with the teachers, or how is that determined? Because to me, it just looks like spot here, spot there, spot here, spot there. I have no concept or idea, just from what was presented, on how this is going to help improve the whole district. With the number of schools that we have that need support, I don't understand. Like, you know, the reading, the literature, the 3rd grade, I mean, that's a district issue. And so if you could just kind of give me some insight on that, please.
Tell her again your role.
My name is Betsy Eppolito, and I'm the director of the state support team. To answer your first question, one of our special ed consultants, Amy Todd, is assigned to work with your positive school climate staff and personnel through Dr. Roberson's office and through Sheila Burton. And so that team has been looking at PBIS, or positive behavior interventions and supports. Dayton calls it positive school climates. I've identified some schools that have participated as pilots. We have been training your core team, and we have trainers who go back into the buildings and help to build that culture with the teachers. So they build teaching scripts for teachers to speak in a very positive way to their students. They develop a reward system, and they also develop a system to address all of those issues that students may be, in terms of how do you walk to the restroom? How do you stand in line? How do you transfer from one activity to the other in a positive way? How are you respectful of one another? And so on and so forth. So that's positive school climate, and that's what we've been doing. The idea is to get some roots established in a few buildings so that we can begin to collect data and see how we're progressing, and then to move forward with additional buildings.
Now, would this also cover principals and interaction with parents?
Yes.
Is that part of this?
Part of it is, right now they're working at the teacher level, working with teachers and students. There is also classroom modules where they work individually in the classroom, and then there's a parent and a teacher support system that can help parents transfer what the students are learning in this positive school climate to home, so we can help build that connection between school and community.
Okay, and I guess I'm thinking culture and climate also has to do with how our principals interact with our parents in a respectful manner, and to try and encourage them to get more involved in the school district. So, or in their child's education, so that they feel welcome there in this environment. So I didn't know if that was a component of this, because I know that Dayton Public needs that, so.
Yeah, so that was also listed on my last slide when it talked about, I specifically pulled all those things out of your plan, out of your district plan.
Okay.
And it talks about parent involvement all throughout the plan. It's weave throughout there. And then the state support team will put in efforts to address that across all levels. So through the
To
district
help train
leadership
us,
team. Mhm.
so that we can do it, know
Right. Right,
how to fill in the gaps and, okay.
right.
There again, it was mentioned in the recommendations, and the district was purposeful in making sure it's a part of the plan so it could be addressed. And we want to reiterate the district leadership team, the building leadership team, and the teacher-based teams. Are you familiar with that
Yes,
system?
yes,
Okay.
yeah.
So I'm happy to see even in their district leadership team how they have community involvement and parental involvement as well.
And to answer your second question about how we determined the levels of support, we are working in focus schools exclusively based on the direction of the department through the state support team. Dr. Eileen Diamond and Michael Kelly are working in the priority schools based on their direction, and then our team is working in the focus schools. Superintendent Ward and I sat with some of members of her cabinet and looked at the proposed system that we had in place. In year one, we are intensively, what I like to call boots on the ground, working with teachers hand in hand in their teacher-based teams. We begin to help them build the structures, and then we gradually step back and we hopefully build that capacity that these two ladies were talking about earlier, so that the teachers can do this on their own without us being there coaching them. So we coach, and then we step back, and then our year three would be, we would be watching the teams operate independently. We would be spot checking, following up with them, but it's really to build their capacity to take on that level of work. So that is we have a sustainability and an exit strategy, and that's what Superintendent Ward and I and some others had worked on collaboratively. And then determining which buildings and how that level of support would be. In the past, I have to say that we probably were not as effective as we could have been. We would assign one person to a building, and that's virtually impossible. I think the comments were made that you wanted 28 support staff. So what we did is we looked at the expertise of our staff. We specifically hired consultants who had expertise in that pre-K3 area because we knew early literacy was one of your initiatives. In grades 4-8, we wanted content specialists who could address literacy and mathematics at that deeper level and know the content very well. We also then looked at high school staff who could address the content areas. But the other component of a focus school is that we need to close achievement gaps. And so speaking to that area about watch schools, we have folks who are really well-versed in special education, diverse strategies for diverse learners. And we look at students who may be marginalized because of color, because of economically disadvantaged disabilities, and so on and so forth. So our team has been through extensive training on how to support schools at the principal level, at the teacher level, and at the building leadership team level. So I'm sorry if I didn't elaborate on that earlier, but that's really our focus in terms of supporting the district's plan that has been outlined through the Academic Distress Commission's report. And then the district built their plan, and the building leadership team then follows that district plan by implementing it through the teacher-based teams.
So then, I'm thinking that that you have someone at the boys' prep.
Yes,
Okay.
I think these two ladies right here are at the boys' prep.
So what happens there? How does that get filtered out to all the other schools that maybe you're lacking in the same area?
Well, there are staff members assigned to those other schools. So in each one of the focus schools, there are at least 2, maybe 3 staff members assigned. And they would support those grade bands based on that school. So then that stays within that school, and hopefully during their principals academy and other opportunities, those principals can collaborate and talk about the supports that they're
And that sharing should
receiving.
go on within our district with
yes.
the leadership. Okay.
And
thank
through
you.
through the district leadership team, there sits principals and teachers from some of the buildings. I think some of them are here with us this evening, who take this information back to their buildings and share as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Dr. Roundtree?
Thank you, Dr. Walker. I just wanted to mention very quickly and briefly to the team that we had a legislative breakfast in May at which Senator Peggy Lehner attended and other elected officials as well. And out of that meeting resulted in an activity that's in the very early stages, but we are going to offer a community summit on March the 19th, and it's called The Impact of Poverty on Student Achievement. So we have been looking at experts to come I'm not sure if you know Dr. Howard Fleeter. He did the Apples to Apples report a few years ago. He's an economist, and he talked about the relationship between economics and student achievement. He's in Columbus, Ohio. There's a dean of the College of Education at The Ohio State. Her expertise is in poverty and education.
Dr. Roundtree, and
Yes.
he is the one who produced this chart that I showed, by the way, Howard
I'm
Fleeter.
not- Yeah, he's renowned, and I communicate with him very regularly. We have others here in our own community, and we're also looking at some national speakers like Pedro Noguera. So we are, we're not on square one yet. We're just doing our research right now. There's a poverty center at Cleveland, at Case Western Reserve in Cleveland. So we're looking at not just pure academics, but practitioners as well. So I think we would love to keep you informed and send you a formal invitation to that event. We're going to be honoring individuals who focus on providing wraparound services and support to our students. We're going to be looking at pre-service teachers. There's a big game called the Poverty Simulation Game that is really been used at other cities throughout the United States, and we're looking at that, as well as bringing in some documentaries on the experiences of African American males in particular in our public education system. So we will certainly love to keep you informed of that event, and hopefully you'll want to attend.
Yes, thank you.
You're
Thanks for
welcome.
sharing that.
Thank you. Thank you very much for,
Well, there were two questions that Superintendent Ward sent to us
oh,
to
thank you.
remind us
Okay.
that the last time we were here, you had questions. So the first, I think I've already addressed, and it was the question about how value added is calculated. And I will like to repeat that we would like to do a separate training session to discuss the report card and measures to include value adding, if you want that. And if we are able to get maybe 3 dates now before we leave, that we could share with our accountability team, if that's something you would like.
Let me agree with my colleague, Dr. Bagaroff, and says, if it's free, we want it.
Okay. Okay.
And we will get with our Ms. Kidd
Okay.
and get that worked through.
Okay.
And we would give you a date. And
Excellent.
thank you for your generosity and your
Great,
willingness to
great.
come and work with the board specifically.
So we can get 3 dates that could work for you so we can see, and I guess communicate with Superintendent
Yes.
Ward, and she'll let us know. The other question was, if I am articulating correctly, will the value added be calculated for 2014 and 15 school year due to Park changing over to air, particularly with reading and math, 3rd grade through 8th grade, and is the information valid? Is the value added information valid? So the response from our Senior Executive Director, Chris Woolard, is yes, it will be calculated for 2014, 2015 report card, and yes, it will be valid. It will be valid data. It will be released on the report card this winter, and more details on the exact release schedule is forthcoming. Schools can show growth, as he explains, on new assessment proficiency scores, because it's about maintaining or increasing your place on the distribution list. So regardless of the test, where are you? So with the park, if you're a student on a scale of 1 to 10 and there were 5 students above you and 5 below, you can still measure where you are on the new test. It doesn't matter on the test. So how many students are above you and how many students are below you. And there again, that's something that can be further explained when we have our representative come. But in essence, there will be value added on our next test. Because there again, we're testing, where was your child when she came in? At the beginning of the year, where was she or he? And by the end of the year, was their year growth from wherever they were, for the most part.
I just have a follow-up question. I think that, Ms. Huff Franklin, if you can take back, when value added was originally created, it was a 3-year it was a 3-year cycle attached to literally a child and that measured
Right.
my potential growth.
Right, all of their
Yeah, and
scores
so-
are averaged, yes.
And looking at the state and so forth. One of the major issues is as value added, as a child, I can fall in multiple subgroups and still have value added scores. So I could literally be counted 3 times in a district.
Right.
And if you could take away to see what during the summer, the ESEA waiver, will it be including any changes to value added?
Okay.
That's problematic when we have children that go in and out of the district. And so we lose track of their 3 years, if
Okay.
you will, but we're held accountable,
Okay. We will-
okay? And then I could literally be gifted special education and in the lowest, I could literally be in all of them.
Right. Right, right.
And we really support that value added should just be on one literally measure. It's a very complex measure. I think it is very confusing to parents and the community.
Well, I will present that idea in itself to Dr. Woolard, for sure, as one of the follow-up questions to respond to whenever we can have somebody come out and speak, as well as what I said earlier with the ESCA waiver, things that we are proposing to the federal government as well. So we'll keep that in mind. So that is all I had, unless you have any other questions. So as I said earlier, it is not our intention to come back to speak to this board per se unless we see egregious growth or non-growth. If we see red flags that we think warrant being brought to the board and community's attention, that's when we will come back. But we will continue to monitor as we have been in here. Now we have more of a purpose with our aligned supports at Ohio Department of Education. We're more purposeful in our monthly monitoring. As I said, as we already said, Betsy and her team, who are greatly to be applauded for their efforts. They are meeting with the district every month. From our office is Tarek White, who is giving the report back to the center as well to say what's the progress, to hear and share out the progress of Dayton so that we can give supports, as I said already, as needed, if needed.
Thank you very much for your time and for this in-depth presentation. And as a board and a district, we want to again say how much we appreciate your support of the district, and we will look forward to the time when we can have more intimate time with the board where we can get more into the detail.
All right, thank you.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate everyone's support of this district as well. We have to apologize, we're heading back to Columbus and
Safe travels.
traveling.
Safe travels.
As the team transition out and to travel back to Columbus, we'll continue with our presentations and turn to Mr. Lester Weller from the Dayton Education Council.
Good evening, President
Good
Walker,
evening.
members of the board, Superintendent Ward, Treasurer Mr. Jones. I want to salute Dr. Roberson for his work in gifted education. For years, Dr. Richard Melson and myself and the Dayton Education Council plugged for the reinstatement of the gifted program. In the 80s and 90s in this district, when we began New Futures and Magnet School System, we had gifted education in every school building. We had Lincoln as the IGS school for those students who would go into one school. It's important that we do it with fidelity this time, and the focus should be on sustainability. And once you plan it, burn the plan so no one knows how to take it apart. The Dayton Education Council met on November the 9th to put on a presentation with the help of Dr. Michael Gaines of Central State University and his team, and Miss Stacy Thompson of Key Bank, former board member. And we had 38 people in attendance talking to them about how to plan for college, what they needed to do when they got to college, and the changes that have happened most recently in the federal government's intake program for student loans. We informed them of new identifying criteria that parents have to have, the student has to have, and those kinds of qualifications that must be met for them to reach the goal of higher education. It was a wonderful event, and we hope to have it every year to inform the community. And 38 people, students and families, was an excellent turnout. We held it at Thurgood Marshall. Once again, Dr. Roberson, never let anybody point their finger at us and cast aspersions as to our intellectual proclivities.
Thank you, Mr. Weller. Mr. Jones, do we have persons from the public here to speak this evening?
President Walker, members of the board, we have 4 people who have indicated an interest in speaking. First will be Iris Blanchard.
Superintendent Ward, Board of Education, members of the community. My name is Iris Blanchard. I'm with Racial Justice Now. Want to briefly explain what our mission statement as well as our vision. Our mission statement is to advance parent leadership that ensures that all children, are rightfully educated regardless of where they live. Our work is especially focused on public, charter, and vocational schools in the state of Ohio. We work from a political framework that is focused on systemic social change through racial justice and human rights fulfillment in public education. Our vision is to impact how school discipline practices are being utilized as push-out mechanisms into the criminal justice system, leading to racial disparate impact and the criminalization of African American families. We also want to impact how and what our children are taught while working to keep the public in public education. With that being said, education is a human right. As such, Racial Justice Now, in collaboration with Journey for Justice, which is a national organization that is based out of Chicago, Illinois, are hosting a forum December the 9th, 2015, entitled Human Rights, Education as a Human Rights Forum. It's from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m., and it's at the RTA Cultural Center, 40 South Edwin C. Moses Boulevard. We are inviting, we're challenging, we're not only inviting, we're challenging members of this Board of Education to be an active participant in that forum. For too long, our children, particularly Black children, have suffered from an inadequate education in the state of Ohio. So it's just not indigenous to Dayton Public Schools. This is a statewide, a national issue. With that being said, as we deal with the state of Ohio, one of the things that we definitely want to come, learn, and share is how the impact of House Bill 70 has affected our children in particular, and also talk and discuss school discipline bills that are pending in the state of Ohio currently that can affect our children. Human rights in education is not just a chant. It is intentional, and it's our mission to ensure that human rights impact our children in a positive way. We want to ensure that the rights of our children are not being violated, and we also want to recognize who is in fact doing the harm to our children. So again, I challenge you all to come out and support, as well as we challenge the community to do the same. Thank you.
Next, we have Ebony Hastings. Ebony here. Our next will be Zakia Sankar Jabbar.
Greetings, Superintendent Ward, Board President, Dr. Walker, and Treasurer, Mr. Jones, and the rest of the board. I'm going to respond to a few things that I heard here this evening. Firstly, I want to respond to the gifted program, and I think there was a comment made that the gifted program goes to where the gifted students are. And I think I was challenged by that in my spirit because, especially dealing with the high school, and I appreciate this student from Middledale speaking up, are we saying that there are no gifted children in any of the other high schools? That's my first question. And I also think that it deals with a resource equity issue. You heard our mission statement, so we don't apologize for specifically focusing in on the needs of Black children and Black families in this community and in this state. I think that another piece that concerned me is around the discipline data from the first quarter. Black male students are not just overrepresented, but it's really a crisis level of out-of-school suspensions in this district. I don't understand how in the world you think you're gonna have a district that is gonna be successful while you're kicking out a large number of the highest demographic in this district. And I think that when you talk about school culture and climate, I think you really need to deal with some of the staffing issues that you have, whether that's administrative, principal, something needs to change. Because at this point, we're getting a little frustrated. And I think that we've been working diligently with members of this board and the superintendent. And I think for that first quarter data to come out and the numbers look the way that it does, specifically with Black male students being the highest to be pushed out, that's of concern. I also wanted to share that we're not just complaining here at the board level, Dr. Bagaroff. We were in Columbus today. That's a photo of our members, some of our members, who are all parents here in Dayton Public Schools, and some of the students. In fact, two of the young men on that picture were students who were kicked out of Thurgood Marshall High School recently, okay? They told their stories today in Columbus to the legislatures. We're asking the school, the legislature, to repeal Ohio's zero tolerance law, but not just that. We're also asking them to deal with student achievement and racial disparities in achievement and graduation rates. I shared with you all at the Thursday board meeting a report that was released by the Schott Foundation in 2015. Ohio is at the bottom in the nation of graduating African-American males from college, or from high school. That's a crisis, and it's unacceptable, and I think that Dayton Public Schools should lead the way in making sure that African-American students, African-American males in particular, have access to a quality life and a quality education. And so I'm challenging this board to do more than run its mouth about what we need to do and put resources. I don't want to hear that there is no money. There's money, okay? Allocate the resources where it needs to go. That's not a threat. That's just a command from the community, because we are organized and we'll continue to organize and get other people involved and continue to agitate and come back here if we have to and take it wherever else we need to go. But it's unacceptable for Black children in this district not to get their needs met. Period. invest in public education, not prison cultivation for black children in Dayton Public Schools.
Okay. Ms. Allen?
To respond of what you just said, I feel as though we should challenge our Black African kids and not only challenge the people that is there to help them, because I'm in school 24/7, and some of our Black African kids, they just don't seem like they care because they're not taught that education is important. And it does start with the parents before it starts at the board member. And at the end of the day, it starts at home. We can't blame the teachers and the people that's here to help us when we're not taking the point to help ourselves. So it's more than just an issue that starts here with the district. It also starts at home. That's it.
Thank you.
We have one final, Hashim Jabbar.
Peace and blessings, board members, superintendent, treasurer, our student board member. My name is Hashim Ali Jabbar. I am with West Dayton Youth Task Force and Racial Justice Now. I am a volunteer and have been a volunteer for the last 2 years at Westwood Elementary School. For the last 2 years, I've also been a case manager at our local One Stop, the Job Center, working with 14 to 21-year-olds. And I've had the unique opportunity of working with young people, specifically in their reading literacy and their math literacy, hands-on understanding, if they can actually fill out an application, read an application. I've tested many of them, so I know hands-on the opportunities and the challenges that we have in our community. I would like to thank Jeff Mims, Commissioner Jeff Mims, for initiating the Men of Color Initiative. Although I do not identify as a man of color, I identify as an original black man, the maker, originator of all color, where all color came from. But I thank Jeff Mims for initiating that. I live on the west side of Dayton, where most of us identify as black men. And the west side happens to be the home of the lowest 10 performing schools in the district. And I don't believe that that lowest 10 performing schools are in the district because of the children are slower, because we have worse parents. I think that there is a equity problem in resources, and this was highlighted in the Stress Commission's report. So we want to continue to urge and push for resources going to the most needed schools, to the most needed students, which are all 10 schools on the west side, the lowest 10 performing schools on the west side. Unfortunately, the Distress Commission left. However, they did say that they have the opportunity to run this tape back and to see it. So I hope that nothing changes, that it will be up on DPS's website. So nonetheless, we welcome them as they did leave to our great city, this Gem City. If you don't know, the Gem City is symbolic of the students, the children here in our city that are the diamonds, that are undercover, that it takes great educators, great parents, great community members to dig down deep into the earth to pull these gems up and polish them up and make them great citizens. So I thank the school board, and I thank Mr. Craig Jones. And if you could please, Mr. Jones, inform me that so I don't misspeak, but I know that you were receiving an accommodation from the Ohio School Board. Could you please highlight that for me so I don't misspeak? I wanted to congratulate you on that, and note that you did participate in the Men of Color or Black Man Initiative this past week. Could you share that with them? I'm sorry, please.
I'm not sure what accommodation you're speaking of with the Ohio School Board, or is
Association?
I think some of the pilot program that Dayton was.
Maybe the Government Finance Officers Association. The district is participating in a new program that they are sponsoring. We're one of 35 districts from across the nation that are participating in the Alliance for Excellence in School Budgeting. And so that's a way for us to allocate our resources to meet our mission and increase instruction, improve dollars to instruction so that we can meet our mission and improve our academic performance. So I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to.
I think it was. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. And lastly, if we could pull up that PowerPoint presentation. again, talking to the Ohio Distress Commission. They came last January, and many of you know I was very emotional about them coming. And we did have a community meeting about that, emergency community meeting. It was very well attended on the west side of Dayton, that the citizens and the community members on the west side of Dayton are very concerned about their children and the education and of their children. And what came out of that meeting, one of the things that came out of that meeting was the community Saturday school. We ran the Saturday school for 8 weeks, focusing specifically on literacy and mathematics to increase the literacy and mathematics of our students. We used a culturally relevant curriculum, using the 7 principles of Kwanzaa, which is a holiday that we have originated here in America, using the 7 principles. And we had chess, we had mathematics, we had language arts, and we also had cultural awareness. We served K through 4, and we can continue on those slides. And this is just some of the pictures that came out of that community meeting. So we're not just here to talk, we're not just here to serve rhetoric, we're not just here to hold you accountable. We're all going to do all of those things, but in addition, we're going to continue to serve our community members, ourselves, and we're going to do it in a culturally relevant way. And I thank you, our student school board member, for being a strong voice. You've spoken more than anybody else I've seen from the school, and we appreciate you for that, and we urge you to continue to speak just as you are speaking. But one of the reasons that children are bored in school, or they don't take their education serious, because they're bored, because the curriculum has nothing to do with them. They don't see themselves in the curriculum, and therefore they want nothing to do with that curriculum. And I am a testament to that, because God blessed me to finish college, but I only did it because I was a good athlete and I had a great parenting behind me. But I was bored out of my mind in school, so yes, I was suspended. Yes, I did spend plenty of time in detention. Yes, I was almost expelled, but God was with me and my parents were with me, but I was bored out of my mind. So a culturally relevant curriculum, we asked that the school board support our community Saturday school. We asked that Treasurer Jones, we're asking that you come out and volunteer some of your time in the area of mathematics, because we don't teach mathematics like it's taught in school. We teach it with some black people seasoning salt, as it should be taught. And so we ask that you come out and you volunteer some time to let young people know what leadership looks like. And we appreciate your voice. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We want to thank each one of you who've shared from the public. It's important for us to hear your voices, and not only just hear your voices, but to look at ways that we can integrate those voices into the work that we do on behalf of the children here in Dayton Public. So thanks again. Let us hear now from the bargaining units. Okay. Okay, thank you. If that, we will now move to our new business, and we will start with Dr. Bagaroff.
This one? No, that's not the one. Sorry. I have a resolution on the internal auditor reporting and plan in Dayton City School District. It basically approves a number of documents that were discussed at last meetings, which our new internal auditor has waded in. All is ready. Specifically, the 6 documents are the board policy for internal auditor evaluation. It's the evaluation objectives for the internal auditor. It's the internal auditor operations manual, which, as you know, is a pretty lengthy document. It's the annual internal audit plan for the fiscal year 2016. It's addendum to the annual internal audit plan, which is a long-term audit plan, and it's the estimated professional development budget for the remaining of fiscal year 2015. So your considerations, please.
You heard recommendation from Dr. Bagaroff. Is that second?
If that, yeah, That was a motion, although you didn't say I moved, but I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Board Member Lacy. Is there further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we're ready to vote. Mr. Treasurer?
President Walker,
Yes.
Dr. McGuiroff,
Yes.
Mr. Lacy,
Yes.
Mr. Lee,
Yes.
Ms. Nerney,
Yes.
Dr. Roundtree,
Yes.
Ms. Taylor,
Yes.
and Ms. Allen.
I abstain.
Thank you. There's 7 affirmative votes with 1 abstention. The motion carries. Let me take a moment to clarify our path forward for the rest of the night. We have 2 items that we need to care for yet.